Welcome to Century Guild Salon. We are here. And I suggest everybody grab your pumpkin spice blood chalices because it's going to be a fun night of sinister, ghastly, what's the other word? Strange, bizarre artworks from the Century Guild collection. And I'm excited to be chatting with Tom shortly, but I just want to welcome anybody who's here right now and anybody who is tuning in after the fact. I hope you find this episode interesting. So here we are, my partner in lawfulness.
So
Hello.
what are we going to talk about tonight?
All manner of spooky, grim artwork. So this season is in our wheelhouse. We don't even really have to try very hard.
That's very true.
So before we get started, I have a little plug. If you're into this kind of artwork and you collect our books, you might already have Beautiful Macabre, which is a paperback we published several years back. And I'm very excited to announce that we are now, we've just launched the Kickstarter, I should say, for the expanded hardcover edition of Beautiful Macabre. So it's going to have 16 additional pages, new artworks that were not new artworks, but artworks that were not published in the first edition. And that link is in the description, so you can check it out. But I just wanted to let you all know, because if you're here, you're probably going to be interested.
Yeah, the paperback was published in 2017, and it did sell out. And it was one of the first that we did when we were kind of getting into this run of making these, this format, the small format paperbacks. And I think that because the response to it was so strong, and with things like Infernal Creatures, where they were a little bit larger, and it was nice having the hardcover with the cloth binding, we thought, instead of just reprinting the paperback, let's make it larger. It'll be a little bit, sorry, my nose is itching. It'll be a little bit larger than Infernal Creatures. I don't remember the dimensions, but it's meant to be a little more substantial. And then we'll put another 16 pages worth of artworks in there. I'm also going to change the format of the book to match more what we did later with books like Infernal Creatures. So, we kind of hesitated. Is it, going to be bad to have a new version that the people who bought the old one, would need to buy the new one to get everything? But we thought, it's been 6 years, 5 years, 6 years, 5 years. We really like making beautiful books. And so this just seemed like a really good one to kind of raise the bar on and make sure that there was like a really nicer, like a gift book edition of it. So we're super excited about it. It's one that we really loved when we made it. It's the kind of thing that is a perfect Kickstarter scenario, because when you look at traditional publishing, it's the kind of book that I would think would be harder to get published. I say that in the sense of, it's posters of small children being covered in roaches and, people dying from asphyxiation from car exhaust and, just lots of weird, very dark posters. So it's kind of the perfect niche where Century Guild fits. Perfect for Halloween. There are tons of old-timey skeletons and tons of, Salome type kind of, the sexy mixed with the dark and mysterious. And speaking of sexy and mysterious, Kat, do you want to talk about any particular artworks or surprise me with a
I do, but I actually have a request, and that is for more sexy old-timey skeletons. So I don't think there are enough of those in the world. Am I right?
Do we have any sexy old-timey skeletons?
I don't know, but
don't think we do.
It's a combination that I think a lot of us would like to see. So we can hop right into it. Let's start with this guy. Sorry, guys. I'm not Johnny on the spot right now. I'm going to do like a big lead up to it.
Uh-oh.
You're not going to believe this artwork exists. And I will mention that a lot of
there's a comment, Rebecca. I have two rounds of bad news. One is that we are not going to be at the Oddities flea market this weekend. I know they did a post, and I believe we should have if we didn't, but we are not going to be able to make it. We love that show. We love them. Ryan and Regina are great. We couldn't engineer. We've moved our operations to the Midwest, and so we had some complications here that are going to make it so that we can't get there. And also, this book that we're talking about has been out of print for quite some time. They did sell out. It was published in 2017. I would say you could probably find a copy, but I would say even better is just go to Kickstarter and type in Century Guild or type in Beautiful Macabre, and it'll come up. If you go to our social media, there'll be links there. And you definitely want to pre-order the new book instead of looking for the old one. It'll be improved in all kinds of ways. So, Kat, I'm sorry. Go ahead, please.
No problem. I'm sorry about that, guys, to whoever was coming to see us, but it'll still be a fantastic show as it all.
Yeah, there's always great stuff there.
Yeah. So first one is Landrew.
Yes.
So, Tom, I don't know if you want to give the rundown.
Well, go ahead. What were you going to say?
I was going to say that Landrew, for those of you who are not aware of this figure, it was a serial killer, and he was known as the Bluebeard of what you
stop moving the image.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. It's like when someone plays with their hair or something. I'm getting seasick from the circling. No, do you want to?
I think this one I'm not as sharp on, and I think you might give a better assessment of.
This, so Landrew, the way that we love true crime podcasts now, it's always been the way that the truth is stranger than fiction, capturing the minds of the citizens. Landrew was a serial killer. And what happened is during the First World War, with the absence of men away at the front, this is in France, absence of men away at the front, or part of it, there's two parts, I guess I'm oversimplifying it. Not only were women's husbands away and then being killed, but also all of the young men were gone. So there was just a huge dearth of the male population in France during the war. And so what happened is this man would write Lonely Hearts Club letters. And I forget the number, but it's in the hundreds of women that he contacted and communicated with. There were, I believe the number was 72 women that then were never seen again. And what happened is that then he ultimately was taken to trial. He was found out, taken to trial, and celebrities would go there to watch this because they just couldn't imagine this horrific of a spectacle. And he was eventually found guilty on 11 counts of murder. And so he was notorious. And he even was a figure in a Twilight Zone episode in the Wax Museum. And this was for a play in Holland around 1920, so right after all of this occurred. And in kind of Grand Guignol fashion, clearly they're showing him as a devourer of women.
Mm-hmm.
And they used elements that were from the trial. Like, for example, one woman and her dog were missing. And so you've got the little dog dead on the chair. So that's kind of the John Wick moment down in the lower left corner. And the woman in the oven, like, you know, theoretically how he disposed of bodies and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a true story, particularly gruesome and macabre and brutally opportunistic. And yeah, so it was like a ripped from the headlines kind of story. And we don't know anything about the production. I've looked high and low. There's no reference to a theater company on here. I've cross-referenced things with the artist and the printer, and I've just not been able to find anything. But we do know who Landru is. The artist did do theater posters in that period. So that's as far as we have been able to figure this one out. But yeah, I mean, it's really gruesome and really a spectacular graphic. You know, 3 colors. You've got that white ink to make it a little bit phosphorescent. Of course, that rich gold ink, blood red, and then just that really crisp, dense lead black.
Mm-hmm.
You know, by street lamp, it would look like he was a ghostly apparition surrounded by blood.
Yeah, I'm getting a little bit of a Rasputin feel from this depiction too.
I think he bathed more than Rasputin.
That's probably how he got so many.
Rasputin, in the more accurate depictions, always looked like he's got some stink flies or something coming off of him. He was kind of notoriously, you know, hermetic in his brain practices. And Landru was very much the dandy.
I see. Well, I'm learning something.
Well, you know.
Thank you. All right, let's see what we've got.
Kit. I said, thank you, Kit.
You're welcome. Let's see. You're not going to believe that this is a real artwork.
I won't believe it.
Every time I'm going to have like a clickbait introduction for each one. I'm just trying to mix it up a little bit. This is a silent film poster, Alron. And this is one of my favorite posters. Just I love the orange and the green, but as far as the background goes, this was a silent film based on a book by Hans Heinz Ewers called Alron. And it's the origin of the Bad Seed story. And if I'm remembering it correctly, the premise is that there's a scientist who's trying to understand the nature versus nurture principle. And so he conceives of a child by using the sperm from a hanged man, a hanged criminal, and impregnating a sex worker. And so the idea being that these were the 2 lowest forms of society at the time. And he wanted to see if the progeny would grow to be evil, or, you know, which would be nature, or grow to be an upstanding citizen, which would be nurture. And so, as you can see from the image, so the mandrake root is in magic. Isn't that how that like homunculus type of creature is grown?
Yeah, Alron means mandrake.
Oh, right. Okay.
And so technically the way you would have theoretically created a homunculus, or is you would take a mandrake root and plant it beneath a gallows, so that when the bodily fluids of a hanged man then dripped down, the semen would impregnate the mandrake, and it would then create your creature.
I see. Okay.
So it's it's a science fiction version, 1919, but a science fiction version of that kind of folk tale.
Mm-hmm. Right. And so what ends up happening is Alron grows up, and she inevitably leaves a trail of men in her wake. So spoiler alert, she's a little evil. And so I love this poster shows that it has such a storytelling element, how she's ensnaring these decapitated heads. And she ultimately ends up seducing the scientist who was technically her father, who raised her. And so she, she's a little bit of a mess, it sounds like.
Yeah, I think that the idea of the story is that she is an upstanding citizen until she finds out the nature of her origin, at which point she goes mad and, kind of starts to destroy her life, ultimately seducing her adoptive father.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lost film. So any synopses that we have comes from the novel, but I would imagine that it used closely. And yours was a kind of like a Germanic H.P. Lovecraft. He wrote a lot of novels that were heavily rooted in the occult, but part of kind of the modernist, the way we would think of science fiction or fantasy in an era like the late teens, early 20s.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was just a super contemporary, an example of someone who was incredibly famous in Germany through the 20s and just completely unknown today. Just completely.
He wrote the original material for Student of Prague, right? Am I remembering that correctly? I think that was.
I mean, the poster that we had up had him on it.
Yeah, I think he had authored some material.
I'm going to check this.
All right. Sorry to put you on the spot.
It's loosely based on a story by Edgar Allan Poe. And then Faust, what you're thinking of is that he wrote the script.
He wrote the script. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Love this poster.
Yeah, it's such a great design. And it's not German, it's for the Austrian release. So there was a later version with Brigitte Helm that is probably a little more common poster, but the Alron one from Austria is just that lime green and orange are really spectacular together. It's very psychedelic.
It's so cool. And in person, it's amazing to look at. All right. La Reform. So this is a great poster because of how delicate it is at first glance. Well, I mean, it's delicate, period, but it just, you look at it at first and it's a beautiful Art Nouveau poster. It's got those very natural swoops and it's so delicate and beautiful. And then, it's a woman being bludgeoned to death with a hatchet. So happy Halloween, guys.
So Privat Livemont is best known as the artist who created the Absinthe Robet poster. That's the very famous one. It's the green background with the woman, the beautiful redhead holding up the absinthe decanter. And he was a Belgian proponent of Art Nouveau. It's very Mucha-esque, his style, but they were working concurrently. So I don't think that it would be fair to say that he was copying Mucha. And anyway, their first posters were right around the same time, and they looked very similar. La Reforme was a scandalous newspaper that would that would publish serialized novels and things like that. And so the Mask of Anarchy was basically painting the organized workers as a boogeyman of some sort. And the idea that the working class, you got to remember, there was a newly formed middle class in Paris because of the Industrial Revolution. But the idea that the unionized workers would rise up. I mean, he's definitely got kind of the communist proletariat outfit on.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that they were going to rise up and drag all the wealthy people of Paris out to the woods and murder them. You can see the guy on the right on the ground is dead, and this poor woman is about to be murdered. And you've got the sword on the side with, I don't know what those have to do with the story, but they're certainly gripping visually. The face through its three phases. Oh, and Sean just said, "Can I take one time?" So Sean, I don't know what it is. It's literally just a head in a greater state of decay, and then ultimately the skull. So I think just in a simplistic sense, it's the idea of the decay of society. I think it's the decay of the scenario. And it's yellow journalism. It's the same thing that, was it the Sun? Was it the New York Sun that was doing it in America? Like, it's just the idea that you're trying to sell papers. And so what's the best way to do that? The fastest way down the spinal column down the brainstem is fear-based reactions. And so the idea that, oh my gosh, we have to read this, the anarchists, and I remember before, you read about anarchist bombings in Paris in the 1890s and things like that. I mean, it was something that was really happening, but certainly not, as we know from history, anything that warranted, the kind of terror that they were attempting to instill with this poster. But the most important thing is that it's incredibly rare as a poster. And it's also incredibly rare to see something. If you're a fan of the work that's macabre and disturbing, it's incredibly rare to see something rendered this beautifully and this elegantly, and also this gruesomely. Incredibly rare. So this is one of the most important pieces that we've ever had, for a lot of reasons, academically. Yeah, I mean, it's one that I love. Important artist, important poster, important time in history, and super rare. It's in a lot of books, in a couple museums, and it's one of the images that we were really excited to be able to put in our book.
Absolutely.
What else we got?
I wanted to thank Shazia for your comment that Brigitte Helm was in both the silent and German versions of Alran, and they're available to watch on YouTube. Very good to know.
I'm so behind in things I need to watch.
Yeah, I know. Well, if you're doing any spooky movie watching, that might be one to add to the list.
A bunch of I was so excited when the serials for Homunculus, some of them were discovered, and the Eastman Library put them online, and I was so excited. And this is like 10 years ago now, and I just never got to. I watched maybe 20 minutes of them. There's so much good stuff out there.
Yeah, there really is.
Meanwhile, I've seen Caligula 32 times in the last 6 months.
In the last 3 days. Well, speaking of tyrannical imagery,
yeah,
this is just a poster that I talk about a lot at shows like Oddities with different people, because obviously the image is so arresting. It's like a Shelob kind of spider, and you have all of these people succumbing to its darkness and that sort of blackened dust over everybody. And It's a poster issued by the American Red Cross, asking when they were in Italy, they were asking the Italian public for aid in fighting tuberculosis because that was a big problem. And if I'm remembering correctly, they had entered Europe around 1917 to aid in the war effort with the flu pandemic. And so, with tuberculosis also being a big problem, I guess they just had an all-around medical effort.
Well, when people talk about the crisis of war, we of course think about the soldiers that are killed.
Mm-hmm.
But something that we forget about is the pestilence that comes with it. And in this case, there was a tuberculosis outbreak. You had a plague of cobwebs in people's lungs. Tuberculosis looks cobwebby in x-rays. They would have had x-ray technology at this time. They knew this. Mm-hmm. So the idea that this, plague of cobwebs, and you've got these shadows coming over the horizon, and mankind is caught in this dark, dark tunnel. And all these people are just in these, like everyone, you've got children, you've got adults in there, and everybody is all wrapped together. And we all know what happens when a spider catches something in its web. It ends badly. And so this is a particularly effective poster design if the idea is to scare you into attention. Again, it's the fear thing. In this case, I would say it's for a good reason. It is making people aware that this is a serious thing. And it was interesting because the Red Cross was asking for the public's help in this. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of a newer idea at this time. An idea that I think then took root, and the idea that people would work together to, for example, fight the effects of a pandemic, things like that. Something that we've forgotten because we're so far away from it. But in, the First World War, the idea that we should be working together to reduce the effects of something happening to a population was a really, really potent idea. Mm-hmm. And it really, it certainly worked enough to stem the tide. And, I don't know the numbers and statistics, but the poster is effective in that regard. And the other thing is the Italians are just the best line artists. I love the French posters. But when you look at the Italian work, there's just nothing like it. That's always 10 years ahead of what the rest of the world was doing.
Yeah, you've commented in past salons about the painterly application of lithography, of Italian lithography, and that definitely is
all those gradations of tone. Look at that. That's everyone has to remember. Each of those variations of blue are done with a different stone. Mm-hmm. So the way the light blue, the dark blue, and then the black interact to get multiple tones. This is also not particularly sophisticated. There's Italian posters that are infinitely more sophisticated, but even this that would be kind of maybe crude, and I'm using that term loosely because it's not crude. Mm-hmm. If this were German, it would be completely blocky. It would be, if it were French, it would, or English or American, it would be very two-dimensional and flat. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's just, the composition, the use of the lights and the darks, the way the teeth of the spider, have the light behind it. Sorry, my eyes are dry. It's just super effective.
It is. It is so stunning. And I also actually wanted to, before I forget, Chandra made a really good observation, which is that tuberculosis in the lungs takes on like a spider web looking effect. And they would have known that at the time that this poster was created, thanks to X-rays being developed. And so that's, another visual element that ties into the poster. Did you say that already?
I did.
I'm so sorry, you guys. Well, I'm glad we didn't forget.
Yeah.
Okay. I believe it's Christopher mentioned Rosicrucians, but I don't know what that was for, Christopher. I'm so sorry. All right. Okay. You guys want sexy skeletons?
Uh-oh.
It's party time.
I mean, define sexy. I don't know what to tell you.
I didn't mean to misspell that. I'm sorry.
This is not in Beautiful Macabre, but this is in our Orchid Garden books. I don't remember which one this is in.
This is Sinister Harvest.
Okay. It's Otto Leinenkogel, and it would have been from 1919. And what's the cover of Sinister Harvest? Yeah. And there's no subtext to this. It is literally just death coming through the field. The Orchid Garden was a precursor to America's Weird Tales, and it was the first horror magazine in history. And they published, they did some serialization, but that's not its main thing. They published science fiction, horror, weird fantasy. And those books are really, really cool. It's a weird series because we made the decision to not edit out anything. So the quantity of books that we published are literally every illustration and every cover from the run of this magazine, with some synopses about what the story was. So it's kind of like interesting light reading. We don't go into anything too deep, but great story ideas, great little whimsical moments, and some really great illustrations in there. A lot of it is early, German kind of spot illustration. But, then there's stuff like this, which are just great pieces of line art. Super cool.
A lot of really great expressionist line art too in there.
Yeah.
And this kind of hints at that quite a bit, but a lot of the Orchid Garden is more aligned with horror, but there's a lot of humor in it, visually at least. It's a lot of very bizarre.
The German humor is it's horror, but it's not horror like modern horror. It's horror like there's a lot of there's one story that I love, which is a bunch of men sitting around a table, and they're in a restaurant, and this group gets together and they're talking about, I don't know if they get together every month or every year or whatever, and they're talking about what would be the best way to die. And everyone's trying to outdo each other with a way to die that could be more grotesque, more macabre. And then all of a sudden, one of the guys falls face down into his meal, and they all look at each other with envy, like that was the best way to die. So if you're shaking your head, that is exactly the experience of reading the German horror. It's just very weird and very strange, and a weird blend of humor and grotesque. And you've also got to remember that, they just came through the war, were decimated by the war. Like it was I think there was a big valve of release in that hyper Gothic sensibility. And then some of it is very just kind of dark in a lack of hope kind of way. And then there's others that are just absurd, kind of mad scientist-y stuff. So anyway, I'm trying to generalize all of this into one short thing. But if any of this sounds interesting, just grab one of those books. And if you like what you see in any one of those, every volume, how many volumes did we publish? Were there 7?
8.
8? And all 8 of the volumes, like in every volume, there's at least a handful of artworks that I know you'll love. And a handful of stories that you'll think are crazy. Can you zoom in on this to show what this crab spidery thing is holding? So yeah, just a great weird, you've got this beautiful naked orchid of a woman with just this weird monster. So that's the thing, is their artwork is filled with, excuse me, all kinds of weird monsters. A lot of Heinrich Clay art is in there. Carl Rabus is an artist that I love that I wouldn't have known about if it weren't for the Orchid Garden. And who did this one back out? And I can say, okay, Muck, Otto Muck. And a lot of these artists like Otto Muck and the other artists, Otto Lindenkogel, are a great example. They didn't do a lot. They did some book illustrations. You'd see them in some magazines. They probably worked as a painter or some other kind of visual artist. But the only artist that really, I think, became a celebrity out of this era is Heinrich Clay, which, you know, it's great to see his stuff in there. But there's great art in those, great art in them.
Here, I'll share another cover.
Yeah, the covers to me aren't even the best parts. Like the ones you picked are not even the 3. I like the one where the guy's fishing with the heads and
yeah,
you know, and then the other, a lot of the black and white stuff, because it's newsprint, lends itself really well. Do you have any of those in there?
I don't, but I might be.
Oh, there you go. Okay, so yeah, look at this. To me is a perfect example of what the Orchid Garden is. I mean, how weird. What does this symbolize? The fact that they're taking their heads and they're dipping it in the blood, like they're fishing for inspiration. It's just a little bit symbolist, a lot peculiar, and a lot really clever ad design. The top hat hanging on the branches of that tree. You know, it's just, if you don't see anything interesting about this artwork, I think in a broader sense, you probably aren't going to like the Orchid Garden. If you look at this and you think, wow, that is a really cool, bizarre, freaky, weird, interesting artwork, then some of the art is a little tame, some is a little more science fiction-y, some is a little more expressionist or fantastic, but it's all of this ilk of this kind of weird, it's Germany in 1919. There's no other way to describe it. But I love this one. This was the cover. They're the one that we used for the cover for our first paperback.
I am going to show one more because I found it. And I mean.
Oh, yeah. This is the one we made t-shirts of. Again, try to explain this. What is it? I don't know.
A lot of enlarged creatures with like Fey Ray kind of King Kong elements. But
I think part of that was a little bit the idea of these creatures as being nature through the lens of distortion of horror, fantasy, science fiction, and the woman or the men in some cases, because there's men in peril in some of these covers too. The people that are in peril is basically us, society, humankind, in the face of the absurd, the unknown, the bizarre, the peculiar, the strange, the Orchid Garden. But this fact that this bizarre slug with all these weird spiky nipples, it's just, you know, what an incredible design. And Max Liedling was another great another great artist that we didn't see really anywhere else.
Mm. I love that slug.
Yeah. Well, that's why we made it into the t-shirt.
Mm-hmm.
Which, I don't know, are we going to have that on our website? We just did a Kickstarter for that.
We did.
Or something.
And I do not have that information at this moment.
Oh. They're my favorite t-shirt.
They're the best.
I wear them all the time, actually, to be honest. I'm wearing one right now. No, I'm not.
All right. Education.
Yeah. So this is a weird one. Do you want to say anything about it? Do you know anything about it?
A little bit. So Marcel Lenoir was...
Chandra just said that we do have slug t-shirts on our website. So on centuryguild.net, you can own a slug t-shirt.
I know that Marcel Lenoir did a lot of very occult artworks at the turn of the century. And I think I've even heard Chandra refer to him as a goth guy who's like just a goth dude. And,
Marcel Lenoir was a legitimate occultist. He wasn't just using the visuals of it. He was very, very invested in occult studies and occult practices, and did a lot of illustration work that is very left of center when you think of the aesthetics of Art Nouveau. It leans just a little bit into the dark and strange in a way that I would say is way closer to posters you would buy at a head shop in the early 70s. I mean, he was very black magic-y. He's kind of like a heavy metal version of Alphonse Mucha. And for this was just done as a decorative plate. It's a large size, and it wasn't a poster to advertise anything. It was just done. I don't know the edition that they did. They might have done 200 or something, but it would, they were signed by him and stamped with his emblem. And it's just called Education. And the idea that you've got this young acolyte who's got the halo of innocence and purity coming in to this wizened magician, wizard, witch. I mean, I wouldn't, the reason I didn't just say witch right away is because you've got, like, there's so many trappings here that feel biblical. You've got the angels in the background, like it's almost Byzantine. It's like there is something kind of, like a magus or something. So she's definitely got like this high priestess vibe.
Mm-hmm.
You've got the cross, you've got the, they could be inverted crosses on her gown. You've got the heart that she's holding that's bleeding, that she's clutching, and you've got the halo coming off of it, the halo of stars. So, I mean, there's a ton of deciphering that could be done as far as the symbolism. You've got the tears of blood in the bottom surrounding the word education, the idea of learning through suffering. So and we could spend an hour just on that. But the simple, yeah, Sean, that is very... It is, I'm going to say Holy Mountain with a heavy metal Art Nouveau aesthetic, because it feels, look at her headdress, look at the black angels in the background, look at the vulture drinking the blood, the lily of purity that's also drinking from the water. Like, it's very, there's a lot of darkness to it. And I don't know what he was like as a person. At the end of his life, he was painting haystacks and people in these very, very Fauvist looking Renoir-ish type. Not even who am I thinking of? I can't think of the artist, but basically what he was doing looked very Fauvist. So just if you look up the Fauvists, but very simple, almost like Gauguin-like. And so he definitely was someone that invested himself into magical thinking. And as most do who take that course seriously, end up in communion with nature, with finding nature as being really the deity and the force and the prime mover in terms of thought and thinking. So he moved away from this kind of material and into these things that if you were just looking at it on the surface, you would think, why is he painting so many fields and things like that? But it makes sense from a magical thinking point of view. You would end up.
It's a really great point.
It's 8:46. We're going to get through like every one of our top 10 is going to be like our top 5.
Well, thankfully, this is not a top 10, so the pressure is off a little bit.
Okay, good. Death of the Gravedigger.
Such a great.
Talk about another crazy heavy metal.
Yeah, definitely. It's this is the Led Zeppelin of symbolism. Does that make sense? I just think that this
Well,
is.
you might also be thinking of their swan song thing was from, I believe it was Elihu Vedder is the artist that did that drawing.
I was thinking more so that when I think of symbolism, this is an artwork that I think is just a classic and really showcases and encapsulates a lot of symbolist imagery.
Yeah. I mean, to be brutal to this artwork, which is one of my favorites, the original painting is hanging in the Louvre. It is the most on the nose of symbolist artworks. Every time you get a symbolist book, this is your first favorite. Because, a man in the winter of his life is digging a grave, and then the angel of death appears and takes him. So, I mean, everything is on the nose as you could possibly be. It's called Death of the Gravedigger. But it's so well done. It's so good. Compositionally, her wings enfolding him, her holding this glowing gem for 1900.
Yeah.
That is crazy avant-garde. This is not 1970.
Right.
It's not 1930. This is 1900. This is like your great-great-grandmother walking through a museum and like, this is the new painting that's up. Like it's so far ahead of its time visually. And the fact that it looks like a heavy metal album cover or something, but again, from 1899. I said 1900 earlier. That's when this print was from, but 1899 was the painting. And Carlos Schwab did the poster for the first Rosicrucian Salon Rosicroix salon in 1892. So he was kind of the preeminent symbolist illustrator in terms of what the populace thought of when they thought of that. So yeah, this is just the way it's printed is beautiful because the green inks kind of glow and there's a luminosity to the gem. And it's rare that they made prints of paintings, but it's a testament to how beloved Carlos Schwab was at the time. And it was at a point where he'd been around publicly in a major way for 8 years. And right around the turn of the century, he had a couple books come out. He had his Le Fleur de Mal. He had L'Effort, and these are major symbolist volumes that came out. So right at the turn of the century, he was definitely peaking.
Yeah, and he did really incredible book illustrations. Hesperus was later, but it still was mythological.
Hesperus was it 1905?
It was around there. It was definitely after the turn of the century.
Hesperus, if anybody has the Mucha La Pater book, I'm sorry, I have the fan on, it's drying my eyes out. It's the androgynous figure floating with, I believe there's lilies and stuff. And so the idea of the alchemist, the quest for androgyny, all of that mystical hermetic type of thinking was very much a part of Schwab's wheelhouse. So he's kind of like the white magic version of Marcel Lenoir. Everything that he did was very steeped in Christian mysticism, hermeticism, the idea of alchemical transformation of the self led to gold. Whereas I would say Marcel Lenoir might have been more Jungian in the idea of the embracement of the shadow.
Mm-hmm.
These are all great observations. I should write these down.
You should.
Write some books.
A book one day.
That's pretty good. Rebecca, the Kickstarter books, when will they be available? I don't know. There'll be a delivery date in the campaign, and those are generally pretty accurate. We have been sooner. We do try to be sooner, but we've also had extremely unprecedented issues in getting things delivered when we think we're going to get them, with getting books from China and things like that. I believe that a lot of the supply chain stuff is theoretically sorted out, but it's been really complicated. So anybody who pledges to anything on a Kickstarter, the thing that we just ask is that you remember that what you're doing is you're funding the creation of something that's new. And that if you feel that that will be a stressful relationship for you, that you can always wait until a book is out and buy it on our website. If you buy it through the Kickstarter, you'll get a discount, and occasionally other things will get put in for you. And like, for example, the Mucha La Pater book, which is $179 now. How much were they when we Kickstarted it?
I don't even know.
I don't know, like $75. The reason that it doubled in price was because it was supposed to be a 100-page book. By the time we finished it, it was 200 pages. Mm-hmm. But so everybody who went on that ride with us gets the benefit of however crazy I get with expanding, adding things on. Mm-hmm. But you know, the exchange for that is just that we ask that you think of it as a patronage of what work we're trying to do. And if anybody doesn't like the sound of that, we keep a fully stocked website with giant slug t-shirts and with, you know, all these other Orchid Garden books and everything. So there's kind of two relationships that we can have with everyone. One is you can come to us as a customer, and we have things that we hope you find incredibly interesting and inspiring and revelatory. And then the other is where you kind of view it a little bit as a patronage, where we're trying to just defer to the altar of making things as great as we can and never sending anything out that doesn't meet our expectations. And so, you know, that's definitely more of a patronage. And so, yeah, so there's kind of those two options. Yeah, just in case anybody hasn't done Kickstarter or doesn't know us. Chandra said the estimated delivery is May 2023, because this book being hardcover, having the slipcases, the stamping, all the things that we're doing for it, it's a lot of bells and whistles. Normally that kind of thing would take 3 months, maybe an extra couple weeks. And I understand why she's saying May 2023, because that gives us some buffer if we have some trouble with our supply chain stuff. But expedient, you know, there are books, I will be the first one to admit, like the Le Pater one was over a year late. Was it 2 years? It was really late. This one, it's not the case. We're going to just be adding 16 pages in and reformatting it. And, you know, so it's going to be more like our paperback ones where they're pretty much on time. And I love, the funny thing, that illustration on the right, it's from 1911. And I found it on this crazy rare book. It's not in any of the national libraries in Germany. And I can't remember the name offhand, but it's from 1911. And I just thought, what a great design, a heart that's a devil head, and it's a really short play that's basically an interaction between people. I haven't translated yet, so I don't know what it is, but just what a great graphic and an example of super rare. It'll be on the internet everywhere tomorrow because now we've posted it. But the thing that we try to do with our books is put things like that it's, unless you can randomly just spend $350 to get some weird book that you spot in a Berlin bookstore, these are things that you're not going to see across. So, we try to make it where it's really worth it in terms of having really obscure, cool things.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Do we have time for one more?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right.
And of course, the Dance of Death on the poster is right behind me here. The Dance of Death poster on the cover. One of the most reproduced images on the internet. The nice thing is that our cover and our image in the book are taken from the original. Just one of the pieces we're really excited about.
Most definitely. All right, let's go out.
Oh, God. The Debaucheries of the Confessor. Do you want to talk? We have 3 minutes. I'll just go. So Leo Taxiel was one of the greatest hoaxsters in history. And he made all of these books and pamphlets just lambasting the Catholic Church, like Mistresses of the Pope. And you had this Pope that was like Freddie Mercury standing there looking over this dungeon of women being tortured by his lackeys. And then in this one, you've got the priest lashing this woman with a cat of nine tails, of which it looks like there are only 4. And she's got this completely euphoric look on her face that does not look like she's being tortured. And then you've got the woman in the window looking in. She's not moving along too quickly. So they were just scandalous novels. And the idea was that everybody in the Catholic Church were all, deviants. And he lambasted them. The reason that he's known as the most famous hoaxer, certainly of this era, is that he wrote all of these books and then he said, I'm a sinner and what I did was wrong and I've had a change of heart. And he devoted himself to God and eventually got audience with the Pope. And once he did that, then he held a press conference. And at the press conference, he said, I was just kidding. I just wanted to see if you guys would believe me. And they literally had to give him a police escort out of Paris because people were so furious with him. But that's Leo Taxiel. So he, he's not only were they great posters and very early posters. Hope is a pseudonym for an artist named Shubrach. And Jules Charest and the 2 Shubrach brothers were really the 3 first poster artists. They were the 3 that worked in large format color lithography. So this is one of the earliest of what we think of as art posters, and how entertaining that this was the kind of subject matter that someone saw fit to spend large sums of money promoting. But again, scandal sells. Oh, yeah, this is another Leo Taxiel. The Mysteries of the Freemasons.
No haystacks in this one.
No what?
No haystacks in this one.
No. Well, that was Marcel Lenoir.
Yeah, I'm just kidding.
Oh.
Just the opposite of the bucolic.
Oh, yeah, I understand. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you've got all this. I'm not, if it's 9:00, if I start talking about this one, we'll be here for another 20 minutes. So, do you have an image for the beautiful macabre cover? We could tell people about that again.
Sure, absolutely. So, guys.
And
begin. Why don't we? I'm sorry, guys. Give me just a moment.
Well, thank you to everybody for being here. If you haven't been here before, when we had the gallery in Los Angeles pre-COVID, we wound up just having all these great openings, and then we would be open late. And if you were wandering around the museum, we would be able to talk about all of these images. And you know, there would always be a dozen or so people that would hang out afterwards. And so we're just trying to make ourselves available in that way. And next time, definitely feel free to put questions in or email us at salon@centuryguild.net if there's anything you want us to talk about. And then we've got the books available now on Kickstarter. And there's some book packages there. And, you know, there are some of the paperbacks that I don't really push that hard, only because, like the Orchid Garden ones, like they're an acquired taste. Like I can't just say you're going to love it. But if there's anything tonight that you thought was even remotely cool or interesting, you're going to love Beautiful Macabre. It is. All three of these books actually are the ones that I think are like the three best ones that we've done. There's other ones I'm proud of, but they're could be considered a little niche. You know, like if you don't love Art Nouveau, then the Cheshka book isn't going to speak to you. Although the Cheshka book is almost sold out, and that is also one of my very favorite ones that we've done. So if you don't have that, you should get it.
Right, before we wrap up,
sorry, Chanda.
it's sold out. I just wanted to respond to Christopher asking what page I believe the Carlos Schwab artwork was on in Le Pater. I don't have the number, but it should be toward the beginning of.
It's in the chapter about the Salon Rosequois. To the left is going to be the poster that Carlos Schwab did. And then on the right, it's a full page of that is, thank you, Sean. Actually, the Freaks one, the full page of the Death of the Gravedigger isn't what's in there. It's the Hesperus one.
Yeah.
The Freaks book is really funny. That is, so there's a movie called 24-Hour Party People that talks about the Hacienda in Manchester and Factory Records. And the designer makes this album cover for New Order that looks like a floppy disk. And they're like, the design is incredible. The problem is that it was going to cost 50 pence more to make than they would get for every one that they sold. And the punchline of this is that it went on to become the best-selling 12-inch single in music history. So the whole story of Factory Records and Happy Mondays and New Order and Joy Division and all of this stuff that congealed, Creation Records, all of this at that time, is that the man who was running it lived for the art of it and not for the commerce. And the way the movie ends is that these guys want to come in and sign their bands. They want to sign New Order. And he said, well, can we look at your contract, like to figure out what kind of offer we want to make you? And he points to the wall and he says, there's our contract. And what he had done is when he first started the label, he wrote in his own blood on a napkin, art over all, or something like that. Art above all else, something. They said, that's your contract? You don't have a contract with any of your artists? He's like, we don't believe in contracts. And then they all walked out, all of the business people, and said, we don't have to deal with you. And Happy Mondays, people like that bailed on this guy, signed the big time record contract, got all the money, had all the money for drugs and guitars that they wanted. And then this guy was working in the basement of a court building, you know, filing in a card catalog. So it's a great movie, 24-Hour Party People. The way that relates to Freaks is that cost us more to make than we sold them for. Mm-hmm. Because every part of it was hand done. All of the frames, the picture frames on the Freaks, each one, it had to be die stamped individually. The books were hand bound. It was all letterpress by hand, all letterpress. Mm-hmm. Everything was done by hand. Every one of those copies is hand bound. And then there's so much tiny, tiny detail that goes into it that whatever it was that we did the Kickstarter for, by the end of it, they cost us more. And it always made me think of that 24-Hour Party People moment. Cause I was like, thank God we didn't sell hundreds of these, because if we had, we would have been. So yes, so all of these frames like that are cut out and then tipped in, and they're cut out by hand. Each painting, because the frame is different, they need a different stamp, and it was incredibly, incredibly labor intensive, but they're gorgeous.
Yeah,
they're gorgeous. And part of why I think I don't push them as much is just because you can't get it. You can't get it from the internet. It's like, it's one of those things that if you hold it, it feels like an artwork. Yeah. But otherwise people would never understand why they're so expensive. But it's all written like an old book from the turn of the century. You know, my name, I don't think is in it, but I wrote it. I think I was pretending to be Gail Pataki. But yeah. Good point, Sean. I forget about that one because it's less of a book and more of an artwork to me. And I'm really glad that you love it. I appreciate that.
Thank you so much.
We worked super, super hard on that. And talk about, like when I was saying earlier about our quality control, I mean, every single thing that could have been done, because it was for Gail. Gail has been my best friend for decades. I wanted it to be better. Like everything that we could do. Oh, the better fabric. Yeah, we got to do it. Oh, the deckled edges, we got to do it. An extra color on the letterpress. Oh, now we're going to do another color. Like everything that we did, everything. Like you'll see little details of color in there. It was a complete waste of money from a business point of view, but you know, it made for a really cool. I think they're on our website.
Yes, centuryguild.net. They are available.
And I believe that, I mean, they're more expensive than our other books, but I will say that we make less money on that book than we do on even the paperbacks. It was so expensive to produce, but we did it just, you know, Gail has collectors like Guillermo del Toro, and Guillermo del Toro had bought 2 of these and then put it in his museum show. So we really wanted to make a book that you could give to someone like that as a gift and, you know, thank them for having bought the paintings and, you know, have them feel like it was a really, really extravagant thing to receive. And so, yeah, so that was a little crazy. I don't think we hit that again until we did Le Pater. With Le Pater, I felt like, okay, yeah, this is a little crazy. This is a lot.
A little bit, but worth it. Thank you
guys so much. We kept everybody late.
I don't mind. I'm going to speak for everyone. I don't think any of them. But I did want to let you guys know that we are also going to be having another live stream this month, and it's going to be on Halloween.
Yeah.
On the 31st from 7 to 9 p.m. Pacific time. So 9 to 11 Central time. And
it's going to be 3 hours.
7 to 9 p.m.
It's not, okay, so it is 2?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we'll go a little late.
We will see. We're going to bring the group and we're going to let you guys peer pressure us into going.
So that one we're going to do from a room with a lot of the posters physically in them. And we will be talking about them instead of showing them on the screen. What is the subject? The subject's Halloween. Sean?
Spooky, scary, scary.
Yeah, we're just gonna go through the freaky stuff, Sean. A lot of these posters are all in one room, and we're gonna be in that room with a video camera. I'm going to, she doesn't know it yet, but I'm going to convince Gail Pataki to come over.
Painter of Darkness.
What?
Painter of Darkness.
Painter of Darkness. And yeah, so it'll be fun because we're just kind of thinking anybody that's got kids or anything will hopefully be home by then. And if not, you know, what are we doing on Halloween? What is it? It's a Monday night or Tuesday night?
It's a Monday night.
Monday night, yeah.
And what we're doing is hosting a bacchanal of candy and art.
Candy?
I mean, I'm going to be eating
eye candy.
Yes.
But yes, maybe I'll play some piano. Our Art Nouveau piano is down there. We don't know yet. We haven't figured this out yet. But we did decide that because it's the last day of the Kickstarter, that we'll do kind of a little closing party. Seen people do that and thought it was fun. So that'll be it.
Thank you, everyone, so much.
Thank you guys
us.
so much.
You are also helping us celebrate 1 year of Century Guild Salon.
Is this the one? Is this the 12th one?
It's the 13th one.
13th?
Yeah.
13th. It's even spookier.
Oh, it's so spooky. So spooky. Such spooky.
Wow.
All right, guys. Well, thank you. I hope to see or speak to you all on Halloween from 7 to 9 p.m. Pacific. And I loved this chat tonight. Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for being here. And if there's stuff that you want to know, just please remember it's okay to ask questions in the chat next time. If there's stuff you want us to kind of make a topic around, we're trying to really just make this like if you'd come into the gallery and we were just having fun hanging out. So, you know, it's less us wanting to give monologues than just, you know, try to figure out how to share cool things with you guys. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. See you guys soon.
Bye, guys. Thank you.